It was under President Obama that the mission in Afghanistan became all about assassinations, aka night raids. His CIA developed and deployed the zero-unit death squads in which Rahmanullah Lakanwal reportedly served. Apparently, the horror of it shattered his mind. Just so you guys understand, like it's not. This isn't a new thing. This isn't a new phenomena. Yeah, 29-year-old Afghan man who shot two nearly sworn-in West Virginia National Guards members in Washington, D.C. had previously worked with CIA-backed militias in Kandahar, the agency confirmed. Rahmanullah Lakanwal entered the U.S. in 2021 under Operation Allies Welcome and received asylum this year under Trump. According to CIA Director John Ratcliffe, Lakanwal served in CIA-run counterterrorism units in Kandahar, including the Zero units, notorious squads used in night raids alongside U.S. Special Forces and long accused of extrajudicial killings and disappearances. The New York Times reported that a childhood friend said Lakanwal could not tolerate the violence of the CIA-backed unit he served in. Prosecutors say he carried out a planned targeted attack yesterday with a .357 revolver before being shot and detained. Both guard members remain in critical condition. The FBI is treating the case as terrorism, and the USCIS has halted all Afghan immigration requests. Here's a video from early on of Democracy Now! In 2010 with friend of the show, Jeremy Scahill, discussing American night raid operations in Afghanistan. When you think about the collective punishment that's been meted out against people based largely on false intelligence, you understand why the United States is failing in Afghanistan.
Mud brick kala compound. People live in these. They're like huge, almost small fortresses built up, 10, 12 feet high with mud brick walls. And then inside of it, you have multiple generations of families living. And we went there and we were welcomed into their home. I mean, what really was humbling is, for most people that are targeted in these night raids, the only Americans they've ever met are the people that killed their loved ones and me and Rick. And in fact, one elder in a family that we went to visit, said to our translator, and we found out about this later, first the Americans kill us and then they want to put us on camera. We were in this family's compound where this man, 8 people were gunned down, and U.S. forces threw a fragmentation grenade into a courtyard where children were sleeping outside because it was hot, and multiple children got hit with fragments of this in the face and the stomach, and we saw the injuries on these children. What crime did they commit? People in these areas thought bandits were coming in the middle of the night. No one comes into the homes of Muslims in Afghanistan at night except bandits or the Taliban, is how people perceive it. So they fight back, and then the U.S. says, well, they fired at us. This little girl comes up to Rick and I, who we had seen her playing in the background when we were interviewing her father, and she came up to us and she said to our translator, I have something I want to say to them.
How old was
and she? She was, I don't know, maybe 4 to 6. Yeah. And she actually was the niece of the guy that we were interviewing, and she came up to us and she said, my daddy wasn't a Talib, but the Americans killed him anyway. And it wasn't a staged thing or anything. We had watched her the whole time playing there, and she came up. We went to another place in Paktia province where this little girl was sort of weaving back and forth and repeating this thing, and Rick was filming her, and we were thinking that she was just playing, and we were filming a kid playing in a courtyard, and our translator had a tear going down his face, and we said, what did she say? And he said she was reciting all the members of her family that were killed in the night raid. They killed my mommy, they killed my aunt, they killed my uncle, and she was a kid playing, and this is a kid who's 3 or 4 years old. We met a kid who had been shot in the stomach and in another place by U.S. Special Operations Forces. They literally shot the speech out of him. He couldn't speak. And we didn't know this until, we're documenting these things in a sort of forensic way, going through each person that was killed, how were they killed, interviewing all of the eyewitnesses. No one's ever done a thorough investigation. So what Rick and I were trying to do is piece together all these targeted killings. So we're in this place in Paktia province, and we're interviewing all these people, and there's this kid, and we see this gaping wound in his stomach. And so we bring the camera over to interview him, and the translator asks him a question, and he's just kind of going like this, and then someone says that he can't speak, and he just puts his hand in front of his face and just starts wailing in front of our camera, going, ah! He wasn't like that before this incident. He is so traumatized. He got shot in his stomach that he literally can't speak anymore. And so when you think about the collective punishment that's being meted out against people based largely on false intelligence, you understand why the U.S. is failing in Afghanistan. The insurgency is spreading.
Yeah. We are now the bad guys. We've been the bad guys. We've been the bad guys. That's why it's frustrating when I try to say that we don't have to be the bad guys, but we have been consistently. And then whenever I talk about how we could We don't have to be the bad guys, and we shouldn't be the bad guys, as a matter of fact. People yell at me and say, oh, you must hate America. Back in the day, it used to be almost exclusive to the likes of Steven Crowder. Oh, if you don't like it, why don't you leave? That clip is from 15 years ago, by the way. That clip is from 2010. And it's crazy that back in the day, it was mostly just like the Steven Crowders of the world who would screech about this shit. But now liberals do it too. Everyone is so swept away with this false sense of patriotism. Not trying to be mean, but my wife is working today as a nurse and she's a fan of you. Can you say, I hope you have a good day, Josie? I hope you have a good day, Josie. 0 units. What do they do? Let's find out.
A raid is one of the most offensive and intrusive ways to place yourself in someone's life. To come to people's homes at night when they are most vulnerable in such a scary way. And when that happens to someone who isn't the right target, they're left with that trauma, night after night and years after. It is a psychological strategy. The US knew that when they used it here in Afghanistan. For years, I've gone on a quest to count the deaths from these night raids. This story is personal to me. My name is Lindsay. When I was 2 years old, a night raid in Nangarhar province killed my sister and mother during the Civil War. My father was killed later in fighting. I was adopted by a British family living in Pakistan. When I was 12 years old, I moved with them to Israel. When I was in my early 20s, I started looking into my biological family. I didn't know anything about them. I actually tried to hire investigators to help me look into it. They were totally uninterested to help. By that time, I had become a reporter in the UK. So I decided to go back to my homeland and investigate my past myself. But what I found in Afghanistan was bigger than anything I had imagined. A bridge that would tie past, present, and future.
Hours ago, the last American troops left Afghanistan.
The US's longest war is over.
20 years since it began on October 2001.
In 2001, everything changed. Days after September 11th, the first CIA officers touched down in Afghanistan, targeting the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. Over the past 2 decades, that strategy largely...
Guys, I think Venezuela will be different. I just want to say, I don't want you to learn any lessons from this, okay? Because I think Venezuela will be different. This time, it's valid and it will be so different than Afghanistan, will be so different than Iraq, will be so different than Syria. This time, it will be different. I need you to understand. Vietnam, sure. Very different circumstances. But this time I promise you, Venezuela, totally separate thing and totally valid. And I think, it's going to be different this time around. So we should just give it a shot. We should give it a shot. Just one more regime change, destabilizing war for natural resource extraction, and we will figure it out. We will figure it out this time. I mean, think about it. It takes a while to perfect. This is a very, very difficult endeavor. It takes a while to perfect. You know what American foreign policy is like? It's like the guy who's the gambling meme, the guy with the pickaxe. 99% of gamblers quit right before they win big. That's it. It's just, let's hear from Lindsey Graham on this one more time. I think that's going to, if at first you don't succeed, you just try again. Obviously, nobody likes a quitter. Nobody likes a quitter.
Consisted of drone strikes, airstrikes, and night raids.
And for the record, this analysis is for the champions of American imperial conquest, not necessarily the military-industrial complex, for example, because those guys do actually make money. They are the ones who are duping the average American into believing and signing on with this kind of shit, for the record. So when I'm making this sarcastic remark, I'm actually directing it towards those who go, insert whatever insurgency group is going to find out why Americans don't have healthcare. It's like, no, you should one day find out why we don't have healthcare. It's this. This is a big part of it, as a matter of fact, just so you understand. Because those guys keep making money and they sell this to you every time because you're a moron, okay?
I was in Nangarhar, looking into my personal story, when I met a widow named Masala. She told me the story of how masked soldiers came to her home in the middle of the night and shot and killed her only 2 sons.
Yeah, the guy who shot the National Guardsman was doing these raids, for the record. Afghan national at the age of 15 was plucked by the CIA, trained to be a ruthless mercenary death squad killer.
That's why we're watching this without knowing why.
ProPublica New Yorker collaborative piece from 2 years ago that was detailing some of the ruthless, wanton acts of cruelty, violence, death, and destruction that these guys engaged in the Zero units. He was a part of 03. Yes, this is the triple Monty, okay? This is everything. This is everything that I've talked about. This is blowback. This is American, this is the classic American violence. This is child soldiers. This is the State Department tapping into child soldiers, utilizing child soldiers. This is a textbook.
Your family had been killed. That it is not possible to move on from the grief without answers. I felt this huge responsibility to look into what had happened to Masala and others. I learned that the raid on her home was conducted by elite squadrons of Afghan special forces backed by the United States. They were known as the Zero units. Over the last 4 years of the war, these units killed hundreds of civilians. They were overseen by the CIA, and their targets were selected using American intelligence. I spent more than 3 years investigating hundreds of night raid operations. I also spent 6 months trying to find soldiers from inside the unit to talk to. I really wanted to find out how they felt when civilians were killed in these operations. I met led 2 Afghan soldiers who are called Basir and Hadi for their safety. They fought in this unit for years.
زما نوم مستر بي دی د افغانستان د سفري قطعې د شرقي ژوند نظامي پاتې شوی یم. ما ویل چې زموږ غریبه کورنۍ وو. مور مې ناروغه وو. ما پیسو ته اړتیا درلوده. موږ اورېدلې چې دا قطعې د CIA مربوط دی او دوی معاشونه هم په ډالرو دی. د خپلې مور د خدمت په خاطر کوښښ کوي. بالاخره د سفردو قطعې ته.
If I recall correctly, these taxis were derived from a Green Beret counterinsurgency handbook that was written based on the Phoenix program, death squads in Laos and Vietnam. I mean, even the Dahia Doctrine is detailed off of what America did in Korea. Bringing the war to the entire civilian population deliberately in an effort to punish any sort of liberatory, emancipatory movement.
موږ ته د خپل قومندان لخوا معلومات راکول کیږي. موږ یوازې د دغو اجازه لرو. له 80 تنو کم عملیاتو ته نه ځي. 10 تر 12 تنو امریکایان وي.
In 2019, Basir and Hadi told me about a night raid in Logar province when they killed 4 members of a family. I'd later speak to the surviving grandfather and uncle. This was not the first time they had killed civilians, but it was this raid that felt like a turning point in their lives.
دروازه په بام روانه زوغه چې دا مساکې د مو څو د سره وره د بودی د شګیز دی و دا ونه کې د نس دی غابوک ولا سنا پورته ونه سي دا اوځي د باندې راوځي.
هماغت به حکومت منوار نور مکوی دی مکرمان زخمیان شهیدان هم سویدی مخی
اطلاعات غلط وو. په وژل شویو کې یو طالب هم نه و. دا مرګونه زموږ د لاس نه وشول.
Why were they even doing the raid? Seems like terrorism to me. Environment of fear, but also it is terrorism. This is the point. This is what state-sponsored terrorism looks like. It's what is. That's why I say Israel's a terrorist. That's why I say America is a terrorist. This is what we do. Like, our understanding is terrorism is associated with like non-state actors, but state actors more commonly engage in acts of terror. What do you think a military occupation is? It's just a legalized version of it. If corporate lobbying is legalized bribery, then military occupation is the legalized, systematized version of terror.
شهیدانی ولیدل چې د هغوی قوارې طالبان سوي دي، واړه ماشومان. زموږ افلار چې د خپله قلبي تکلیف لري او یې تر خطه عصبي کار هم دا لري.
This is also part of the reason why I always get frustrated when people are like, oh, Hasan is just a campus. Hasan is just anti-America. Hasan is just anti-America. Oh, he's just always anti-America. Like, how can you learn about global history from the perspective of the victims and not develop an attitude such as that one? I'm not anti-America across the board, but I always say, like, if you are a campus, you're going to be right on like 98% of issues. That's just what a global hegemon does. That's it. Being anti-imperialism will, yes, require you to demand America do better. And therefore, a lot of the hoorah patriot dipshits will run around and say, oh, you want America to not do this kind of endless violence and imperialism? You're anti-America.
د تفریق تو هدف دا دی چې افغانستان کې تروریزم ختم کړي. ځینو سیمو کې تروریزم زیات کړي. امریکایان وایي دوی تر ټولو غوره ټکنالوژي لري. نو بیا ولې د ملکیانو
What do you mean by campus? Campist. Camp. Like a tent. Campist is a terminology that implies that you are in the anti-America camp. So you just always defend whoever is opposing anti-America initiatives. It's a silly term. Many people don't even know this. When they say tanky, that's what they're talking about usually.
توپیر نشي کولای. دوی امریکایان دي افغانان وژني. موږ افغانان یو افغانان وژنو.
What you are looking at is Taliban fighters inside the presidential palace.
I felt so helpless when the Taliban took control of the country again. After everything I've seen in the last 4 years, I wonder why the US has never been held accountable for the damage they leave behind. Everyone in Afghanistan has this shared pain about what these raids have left behind, whether that's the families or the soldiers conducting them. Night raids failed in Vietnam, Iraq, and now Afghanistan. Who will suffer when America uses this same failed tactic in their next war?
Next time it'll be fine though. Next time it'll be different. Yes, I am not of the mindset that this is a failed tactic. It's working exactly as intended. I don't disagree with you. Yes, wars are not meant to be won. Wars are meant to simply continue. That's how it goes. So yes, technically all of this is done so that our capital owners can continue accumulating profits, revenue, profit margins keep expanding. They keep getting new markets of unlimited natural resources that they can extract at a price point that under normal circumstances would still be beneficial for Western capital, for the record. They just don't want they don't want the locals to have any say whatsoever in it. But when I talk about this from the perspective of failure, I'm talking about this as a failure for the average American. That's what I mean. Like, what is all this for? Who is all of this for? Are you seeing the bounties of all of this imperial conquest? You're not. Would it make it appropriate if you actually saw through better redistributive programs, if you saw some of this imperial bounty? No, of course not. It would still be unjustifiable. But it's just like doubly ridiculous. The last war was bad, but the next war will be good and necessary. Yes.
I didn't finish finding all my answers. That's true. But I did get some closure through Basir, strangely enough. His remorse helped loosen something in me. Although he didn't kill my family, he is a perpetrator. If Basir was brave enough to speak about the pain he had caused, I could also share my own story and talk about the pain I had buried. I could also start healing.
For the record, to tie this back to something that I've been talking about as of late, there are alternatives out there. While not entirely devoid of fault, the reason why I talk about like a different method of governance and present Chinese development as an alternative with lessons, with good lessons to learn from, is exactly this. You can either exhaust all of your resources and all of your money and all of your manpower on endless imperial conquest, or you can focus on the revenue that you generate and the capital that you generate to develop your own society. This doesn't mean that China is this utopian society. It's not. But if you match it with if you match their initiatives with what America has done, or what the Western world has done so far in the last 50, 60 years, there is a reason why they've been able to go from a country that was dominated by Western colonial powers, Eastern colonial powers, into a country that is now a competitive global superpower in an incredibly short period of time. Brother, the CIA literally said that the death squads were Taliban propaganda. All right. So, with that information in mind, and the reason why I showed you this, like I said, is because the guy who shot the National Guard in D.C. was a part of these death squads. I believe the bandana he's wearing is an ancient Afghan symbol of peace. Yeah, this is why I said this motherfucker was American as hell, despite being an Afghan national. CIA confirms that the DC National Guard shooter worked for a secret U.S.-backed death squad called 0 Unit 3 in Kandahar, conducting nocturnal operations, night raids. His childhood friend in Khost confirms he was addicted to drugs and disturbed by the pointless killing he inflicted. Just an endless amount of cruelty and senseless violence all around the world. And what is the lesson that we're taking from this, by the way? The Trump administration will re-examine green cards issued to people from 19 countries of concern. Another instance of blowback happens, and what does the administration do? They go, oh, he was one of ours, but honestly, we can use this as a way to solidify our white nativist anti-immigrant sentiment. Awesome. That's great. Surely that won't cause more anger and resentment, for the record. You know, that certainly won't actually piss off people even further, by the way. Anyway, here, if you want to know more about this, after Vietnam, there were a shit ton of murders done in the U.S., California and Louisiana mostly, by ex-South Vietnamese Phoenix program guys settling scores. And that recently CIA did a remarkably good job resettling their Afghan CPTP militia bros here. There was another instance, I think, of another, like, I forget who it was. There was another guy who did this recently in Fairfax. There was quite literally another guy that did this recently. He shot cops, though. Yeah. Today's the day. Video shows suspect shot 2 VA officers during traffic stop before fatal OIS. Moments before the shootout, the suspect shouted he should have served with the fucking Taliban, expressing anger at the U.S. before opening fire on Fairfax County officers. This was back in May 27th of 2025. This happened earlier this year. Fairfax, Virginia, newly released body camera video from the Fairfax County Police Department captures the intense moments leading up to a deadly traffic stop shootout that left 2 officers wounded and the suspect fatally shot. Shooting happened on April 23rd near the Greenbrier Town Center in Fairfax, Virginia. Officers had pulled over the suspect, identified as 36-year-old Jamal Wali, for a traffic violation. According to the police, Wally immediately told the responding officer that he was armed. I have a gun and I'm armed, Wally said, as the officer approached the driver's side of the vehicle, according to the body camera released by the department. The officer remained calm, asking for Wally's license. Wally, visibly agitated and shouting from the driver's seat, refused to hand over his license. I don't have a license. Go back and sit in the car and leave, Wally says. According to Chief Kevin Davis, Wally, who came to the U.S. in 2014 after serving as a translator for U.S. forces in Afghanistan, expressed frustration about his treatment in the United States and said he was unable to find work or receive disability benefits. At one point, Wally shouted, I should have served in the Taliban. They're better than you. Wally also said he had 4 children and claimed he previously served in the special forces. His video shows. His statements quickly escalated into a rant, during which he turned on a GoPro camera and said, today's the day, buddy. As backup officers arrived, one positioned himself at the passenger side of the vehicle while another moved to the driver's side. When the driver's side officer attempted to detain Wally, he pulled away, drew a handgun, and fired several rounds. A single bullet struck both officers who were positioned on the driver's side of the car in the arm. This just happened earlier this year. Some more examples of the white homegrown version of this, for the record, is the guy who drove his F-150 into a Mormon church. That didn't get a lot of play, obviously, because we found out he was the most homegrown, the whitest guy of all time. Not only do we have our homegrown version of this, okay, or the I feel like Batman or Halo guy that blew up his Tesla Cybertruck outside the Trump Tower in Vegas. There are a lot of these fucking guys out there. It's just, we did this. I feel like Batman or Halo. Thank you for the 5 gifted subs. Let's not play the game. This is a vet. He was a comprador. What do you mean? A lot of vets get abandoned? No, that's my point. Vet or comprador, it doesn't matter. We mistreat everybody all the same. They are just servants of capital. That's the whole point. Okay, they're servants of capital, and we export our brain rot. It's not enough that we ship our young to do untold amounts of violence overseas so that someone can turn profit in a corporate boardroom. But then also on top of that, we export the brain rot to the local population, and we make them also serve in the same exact violent ways. We brick their brains. We bring some of them back here. And then on top of that, they get doubly fucked up, and they lose their goddamn minds. It's a powder keg. Yeah, Michigan church shooter was ex-Marine. I know. Mohammed Afzal Hussein, 27, a planning director for the city of Espanola, who came to the United States from Pakistan, was shot dead on Monday outside his Albuquerque apartment complex, while Aftab Hussein, 41 was found dead of a gunshot wound in July 26 near the Albuquerque's International District. Those deaths are likely linked to the shooting of a 62-year-old Mohammed Ahmadi in a parking lot by a halal supermarket and cafe on November 7th last year, police said. 2 of those murder men were members of the same mosque who were shot dead in Albuquerque in late July and early August. Police said there was a strong possibility their deaths were connected to the November killing of an Afghan immigrant. This is basically... Yeah, this was all the way back in 2022. 4th Muslim man murdered in New Mexico in targeted killings. It's just like the revenge killings that took place, just like they took place in the aftermath of the exact same initiatives that took place in Vietnam. This ties it back to the ProPublica article about terror in Little Saigon. An old war comes to a new country. The journalists were assassinated on American soil one after another. Duong Tram Lam was the first. He was 27 years old and ran a Vietnamese language publication called Khai Dinh Long, which he mailed to immigrants around the country. A gunman found him as he walked out of his San Francisco apartment building one morning and shot him, a single bullet piercing his pulmonary artery just above the heart. For magazine publisher Pham Van Top, the end came more slowly. He was sleeping in a small office in Garden Grove, California, when an arsonist set fire to the building. He was heard screaming before he succumbed to smoke inhalation. In Houston, a killer chased Nguyen Dam Phong from his home in his pajamas and shot him 7 times with a .45 caliber handgun. The murder marked the end of Dam Phong's twice-monthly broadsheet newspaper, which he had named Tu Do, Freedom. Altogether, 5 Vietnamese-American journalists were killed between 1981 and 1990. All worked for small publications serving the refugee population that sought shelter in the U.S. after the fall of Saigon in 1975. At least 2 other people were murdered as well. FBI agents came to believe that the journalist killings, along with the array of fire bombings and beatings, were terrorist acts ordered by an organization called the National United Front for the Liberation of Vietnam, a prominent group led by former military commanders from South Vietnam. Agents theorized that the front was intimidating or executing those who defied it, FBI documents show, and even sometimes those simply sympathetic to the victorious communists in Vietnam. But the FBI never made a single arrest for the killings or terror crimes, and the case was formally closed 2 decades ago. I wonder why. Violent attacks on journalists often function as a brutal form of censorship, all this other stuff, but that's it. Last year, when fighters from the Islamic State group executed war correspondent James Foley, President Obama praised him as a man who courageously told the stories of his fellow human beings and promised to hunt his killers. Our reach is long, Obama said. We are patient. Justice will be done. Yeah. I think we know what happened to some of the figureheads of that movement. Justice was served, if you think about it. Actually, it wasn't. I don't know what. It's just remember. Wonder what happened to the Islamic State leadership. Wonder what happened. Maybe there's a room for growth and job opportunities. Also, just going to say this right now. A lot of people are going to get mad at me for saying this. Ukraine, get mad at me all you want, but just remember, oh my God, how could this have happened? Just wait. What level of resentment will exist for the nationalist militias and the nationalist forces that were galvanized and emboldened and seen as emancipatory figureheads once Russia invaded Ukraine? The same people that got training and then were cast aside, some of which were, shipped here, maybe. Just saying. All of these violent desires inevitably will have violent ends. Okay? I'm sure emphasizing that we have an ocean to protect won't come back to impact us. I mean, there is a ocean between us and all these other places too. Like, what will happen? What will happen in the aftermath of that? I'm just saying. You're about to see white mujahideen. Ukraine war was not started by the U.S. and the biggest atrocities documented so far are from the Russian side. You're right. We have no involvement in Ukraine whatsoever, and I'm totally fucking oblivious for saying that arming and training, even before the Russian invasion of Ukraine, arming and training the Azov Battalion, which became righteous liberators, we became seen as righteous liberators, will never get mad and angry and resentful against the West for abandoning them and then basically leaving scraps of what remains of Ukraine to the Ukrainian population after endless amounts of fucking war. This isn't a defense of Russia. I mean, you can make the same argument about Afghanistan 1, not even Afghanistan 2. Do people not have object permanence? No. You have to suspend object permanence if you want to find yourself in defense of American foreign policy. Yeah, did the U.S. face blowback from its support of Afghanistan in its fight against Russia in the 80s? No. Famously, the U.S. never received any blowback from its support of Afghanistan in its fight against Russia in the 80s. Clearly, that did not lead to any sort of any sort of domestic blowback. That's just, those towers just kind of did it on their own, you know? They just kind of did it on their own. This is certainly the first time a CIA asset in Afghanistan has attempted to murder American citizens on U.S. soil. That's never happened before, and it certainly will never happen again. This guy is a unique incident. One time, and one time only. I thought he was Saudi. Well, I'm saying CIA asset who operated in Afghanistan for that reason. I didn't say Osama bin Laden was an Afghan national. He was not. He was Saudi. Are you talking about 9/11? Yes, dude. What the you think we're talking about? Yes, we're talking about 9/11. You know, anti-communist CIA asset on a path, paving a path to peace in Africa. Okay, that's what he's doing. Until not so peaceful. Anti-Soviet warrior puts his army on the road to peace. Yeah. What more can I say? Maybe more and more people will understand what I meant when I was talking about America deserving things. I don't know. America bringing about this kind of blowback on its own. Who knows? Anyway,